Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us here today. We are just going to sit for a moment while everybody logs in. Hey Gary, how are you?
Doing great, Ashley. It's great to be here on a Tuesday. I'm really pumped to talk about this.
Well, we are so excited to have you here with us today. Thank you so much.
My pleasure.
This is going to be a lot of fun. So while we have people log in, we'll just kind of fill in the blank space with chitter chatter. I think we're getting there. Okay, let's go ahead. Let's go ahead and go on through. So today we are here with Gary Olive to discuss the recruitment workflows and processes. Um, we are we'll go on an intro Gary after we move through some housekeeping items. Gary, if you don't mind switching over to the next slide, we'll go through how to use the GoToWebinar panel.
Sure.
Thank you so much. So just so everybody knows, you are in listen only mode. This means that you can hear us, but we cannot hear you. But please, no worries. If you have any questions or you'd like to communicate anything at all, there is a panel for questions in your GoToWebinar box. You will receive a copy of this video and all of the materials within 3 days of the webinar. And share, please share. Use the #daily hashtag to share all over social media. Just because we've started doesn't mean people can't join. So let all of your colleagues and friends know where you are today. And Mojo Rank is sponsoring today's session. They are offering a special feature through their demo, so please check them out. Whenever you receive this deck, this will be linked, so you can link straight over, and it will also be included in your follow-up email. So keep an eye out on those emails. Okay, it looks like people are logging in.
All right, go to the next slide. Hey, everyone.
Yes,
Yeah,
thanks, Mary.
it is great to be here. I'm not going to read this whole thing to you. I just had to write it out so I wouldn't forget about myself and my own background. But I've been in talent acquisition for about the last 10 years. I have been a coordinator, a sourcer, a contract recruiter, primarily worked with organizations, a diverse group from FedEx to Kaiser to University of Southern California. I say that not to brag at all, but just to kind of give a background for where I've come from. And it's been a blessing in disguise for me, actually, being a contractor, because I've been exposed to so many different types of processes. Some good, some bad, some in between. So basically the good, bad, and the ugly. So interestingly, I came across processing processes kind of accidentally. A good friend of mine, Marcus, who I worked with at USC, I noticed he was heavily, or actually, I noticed he had he was studying for the project management exam. And he was kind of a guy, he's from a OD background and very much into being efficient and as productive as he can and finding kind of a scientific method to everything to kind of reduce the madness that happens in our own recruiting worlds. So he showed me what he was studying, and it kind of, tickled my interest. So I also decided to, to take up project management, which I did. It took me about a year and a half to get my own certificate. That's the CAP-M, Certificate of Certified Associate in Project Management. It was a journey, but I did actually complete the exam, passed it and everything, did it completely online self-study. But it was definitely a eye-opener as far as how processes and systems and everything can tie into talent acquisition for both recruiters and recruiting coordinators. So I've really learned some tried and true methodologies from that. I'm happy to share them with you. Take any questions, insights that you have. I think we all do learn from each other, which to me is great. As we know, recruiting is always evolving. It's a very dynamic, fluid field. None of us got into recruitment, through a major in college. It's always evolving. So this is just a continuation of that. So hopefully this is helpful to you. And congratulations again for making it out to 2020. And let's hope that we can all have a much better 2021 and beyond. All right, so
Thank you so much, Gary. We're so happy to have you on here today. And yes, I just wanted to reiterate, if you have questions, send those through. I will relay them to Gary. And I'm going to hush now, but if you need me for anything, I'm right here.
Thanks, Ashley.
Thanks, Gary.
Sure. So let's go through this. So what do we mean by process? Essentially, process does sound a little bit nerdy or geeky, but I don't think we need to actually be afraid of that word. It's not just for nerds, not just for brainiacs. You know, having a process in our workday and our workflows, I think, can actually bring some consistency to our work, help us eliminate mistakes so we don't have so many things falling through the cracks. Because as we know, a typical workday, there are 5, 6, 7, 8 fires to put out on a daily basis. We have the hiring managers with their hair on fire, our own manager who he or she may have issues and that we have to work through, our colleagues, someone may be out sick. So processes are a way to actually, bring some organization to our workday and consistency and improve our efficiency and productivity. And if substituting the word process out for system or systems works better for you, that's great. Some words may ring a bell with you. So we can think of a process really as a system. And there are so many areas of our workday and our workflows that we can apply processes to. I'm going to go through a few of those and some concepts as well. Then we'll look at some specific tools that can save time, help you with any activity that you're doing, whether it's phone screens, whether it's sourcing, whether it is managing your data and your information. All these things I think can fall under process and workflow. So here's some key concepts and terms that I learned during a lot of my project management studies. We can definitely apply them to TA. One would be continuous improvement. That's really just about us getting better every day. And if you're on this webinar, then congratulations, because of course you want to be better. You want to continue to improve and not be stagnant. And I think that's definitely a great goal for anyone in TA, is to always want to try and do better and get better. And we've seen great advancements in the last, even 3 or 4 years in TA. We're using AI tools, we're texting, we're using social media. All these things I think are great advancements in how we, talk with candidates, find candidates, talk with each other as well. Another concept too I will go over is something called task batching. Some of you may or may not be familiar with that. I'm going to look at a couple different versions of what trackers. Another concept we will talk about is validation and sustainability. And all these things do kind of work hand in hand with each other. There's not one place where you will only validate and not be in a sustainable practice or continuous improvement. Continuous improvement is throughout your process. So let's look at the last one I mentioned first, sustainability. What does that mean? And this came to me actually as a contractor a few years ago. Had a very hard driving type manager, and every time I would come up with an idea that I thought was great, she would say, no, can't do that. What you propose is not sustainable. And I used to get confused, or what is she talking about? So as I went through my own studies and really listened to what she was saying, is that whatever you are doing, activity or task, make sure that it is easily repeatable. So I have a few examples here. I know when we are new on an assignment or we have a new manager or something, we want to always make a good impression. And one thing I heard of a colleague of mine, that she wanted to provide daily updates to her manager. That is not what I would call a sustainable practice or process. Because you may be able to update one manager every day, but if you have, as you know, we never really have one hiring manager. You have 5, 6, 7, 10 different hiring managers and all the other things that happen throughout a day. It's not sustainable or easily repeatable to be able to provide a daily update. Obviously, the sustainable practice, the process would be to provide a weekly update or bi-weekly update, something along those lines. Unsustainable. Hey, I've been sourcing for 8 hours. I found this great engineer, this great nurse, this great supervisor. Sure, you did it the one time, but is that sustainable? Is that sustainable throughout your week, throughout your month, throughout the year even? So I'd much rather see us, or what I try to practice is setting aside a reasonable amount of time to actually conduct that activity. I know if you're up against it and there's a crunch, you have to work all weekend, but it's just something kind of to keep in back of your head that, is what I'm doing sustainable? Another unsustainable practice, I'm all about recruiter wellness, our own well-being. I think it's hugely important. Working through lunch, eating at the desk, in front of the computer. To me, that is an unsustainable practice for the simple fact that there will be burnout. There will be a price to pay for not taking care of yourself. So I would much rather say, hey, take time for lunch, take time for that break. That is a much more sustainable activity to go through it, rather than just trying to work through your lunch and trying to power through everything and prove, you are superwoman, superman to your manager or colleagues. So that's something to keep in mind when you're coming up with a process. That whatever you're doing, make sure that it is sustainable. Maybe you're trying to write a report and you write a 3-page Excel spreadsheet out to a manager. Is that sustainable with each and every requisition or each and every manager that you're working with? This is a great tool or quote that I love, is progress, not perfection. And that's one of the things actually you do learn when you start to study processes, that it's not so much about the end result. It is about engaging in that process and doing that process as well as you can. The goal is not, again, not to be perfect in that, but it is to make progress. So we look at some tools that we have here. One is intervals. What I mean is intervals. Try to work in intervals, meaning 25 minutes, 50 minutes at a time. That has actually been proven to be a superior type of workflow where you're not burning out. It's proven that you're much more effective in a short interval or a sprint is what we call. So 25 minutes, source, if you got that tough wreck to source, source for those 25 minutes, reach out to your phone screens, maybe do that for 50 minutes. Try as best you can, where this slide does say work, rest, get into that type of flow. You'll be much more refreshed during the day. You're not prone to burnout. Take a minute, get up, go for a walk, have a glass of water, rest your eyes. All those things are reasons why interval working or interval tasking is much superior than just trying to power through that whole hour or 2-hour time period. Yep, focusing on one thing for a long time, not great, not optimal. And this whole process of deactivating and reactivating can really keep us focused. And there is actually studies that from University of Illinois by this professor that shows that this type of activity, intervals, working in intervals, is actually much more effective. Task batching. I don't know if any of you listen to Tim Ferriss, but this is something that I first heard from him. This is kind of similar to what I was speaking about in intervals in the slide before, where you are basically with task batching, taking all of your tasks, put them in, basically you want to put them into a certain time period that you just focus on that at one time. For instance, if you're going to source, you've got a rec you need to source on, give yourself that 45 minutes, say, I'm just going to conduct sourcing for this, for the next 45 minutes. Not, I'm going to source for this, answer phone calls, make my calendar, check emails. Much more effective. Just set aside that time period for a one singular activity. Again, define a time period and work in sprints. Batch related, so you want to batch a related task. What tasks make sense to go together? So if you're sourcing for that 45 minutes, then maybe do phone screens immediately after that. So this is like helping you kind of think through, your day, your morning for that defined period of how you can even optimize your task batching. And then the last thing is, this is part of the continuous improvement process. Our mindset is, how am I doing? How is this going for me? This is also called validation. How is this going for me? And this will show up. It shows up in some of our metrics. It can show up perhaps in the number of people you've been able to submit to a hiring manager. It can show up in your submittals to your hiring manager, where their candidates submitted and into the offer stage. So all these things can show up, and reviewing this is part of the CI process, continuous improvement process, is part of the validation process as well. It sounds a little wonky and scientific, but this is actually a great systemized way of thinking, and it will really have a positive effect on your relationship with your hiring manager as well as your own recruiting manager, because now you are sounding like you know what the heck you're doing, what you're talking about. And we always do want to come off that way with our hiring managers, so they have trust and confidence in us, and that we are giving them accurate information, that we have a solid process behind it.
Gary, we
This,
do have a comment
sure,
that came in
yeah.
just from Lee. He says, while working intervals is great, it's difficult to do when you have critical time sensitive phone calls like salary negotiation back to back. So that wasn't exactly a question, but I'm curious as to whether you have any advice to give in a situation like that.
Well, yeah, sure. That's a great comment. I think that it does go back to the concept of task batching. So if you've got salary negotiations, those kind of conversations can obviously, they're very important, and they can be, sensitive, and they're urgent. So sure, set aside that time for, your phone call with your candidate, for your offer negotiation. Set aside that hour and a half. Uh, that is actually something I do enjoy, that type of activity, because you're engaging with someone. It's not, to me, as monotonous as sourcing can be. So what I would put that in one of the more enjoyable activities that we do, that recruiters get to do. Same as offering someone a job, which I think that is awesome, something that we live for every day, and that is really fulfilling. So those types of things, it does go to task batching, or you can, put that in your task batching bunch. I'll make offers from 2 to 3 or 2 to 4, have those kind of conversations. So that's, yeah, great comment. And yeah, that's definitely consistent here with what we're talking about.
Thank you.
Sure. This is a great, this mnemonic here. This is a process tool called DEMIAC: define, measure, implement, analyze, and control. You basically can plug your activity into this mnemonic here, and kind of tailor it to how you need to conduct that activity. If you have a new revenue source on, you're going to define the parameters. Measure yourself. How effective is my sourcing? My sourcing going here. Implement whatever activity or whatever type of measurement that you want to use here. You're sourcing for that half hour, that hour. If you're going to source for engineers, implement your plan here. I'm going to source on LinkedIn for that time period and send out 5 in-mails or 8 in-mails, whatever it is. Implement that. Look at what you're doing. This is part of the CI process. Analyze it, control and monitor your activity. So this is just a way, hey, kind of get your mind going into kind of, again, that organized workflow and that systemized way of thinking. Oh, checklist. Now, I love checklists. Hey, if it's good enough for a pilot, it's going to be darn good for us. So here's an example of one checklist that I got from a colleague of mine on a previous assignment. I went to her. I was new on the assignment. I went to her for some advice on our ATS system, or finding a candidate in the system in our ATS, and what was going on, how to kind of move them along, and different things. And the first thing she said to me was, "Where's your paperwork?" And I said, wow, paperwork, what are you talking about? You know, I've got the ATS here, I don't need paperwork. But what she showed me was was some checklists that she actually had, and you know, very general, very simple. Obviously, the general information on top, you know, the name of the candidate, new hire, you know, the date, the date of hire, position, requisition number, all those things. Now you can digitize this obviously as well, but the point is that there were some steps below where the approval sent, did the manager receive it, was the offer extended, they just, you know, offer letter, drug screen launch, credentialing, all these things in order. Some of these companies, some organizations have kind of detailed processes for their candidates and new hires they go through, and we don't want to miss anything. So that's really why I do like checklists. Uh, it's a old-fashioned, old-school way of doing things. But I think the beauty of it is, especially when you're new on an assignment, new on a position, these can help really get you up to speed quickly. You know, with a checklist, help you eliminate mistakes, be more efficient. And then if need be, if you need to, you know, if it's something that lives outside of the ATS system, you at least have a record of, you know, what activity you are doing. A lot of times the drug screen is not really a part of the ATS process. Some systems it is, some systems it's not. Credentialing, usually that's done outside of the ATS system. You have to send the emails to credentialing or to your certification department, work with them that way. So at least with a checklist, you can be sure that you're kind of following a system and a routine, you know, for these kind of important activities. You can tell me whether, I'm just curious if people like checklists or if they think this is really too old school, you know, going back to paper. But I do think it does have value, and particularly when you are brand new on an assignment. Another great tool that is invaluable, I think, to our process is a recruiting plan. This is kind of a scaled down one, but here, of course, we have the very general type of information, starting with the position, location, and the manager. The type of new opening it is, because we will get, you know, asked by candidates, is the reason for the opening, is this new or replacement? Candidates do want to know that. So if you have that information, then you are able to give that. So this is a conversation having with the hiring manager, going through that, going through kind of, you know, the new position. You also want to have a conversation with the manager during this process about salary range. Is there a bonus availability? The ideal start date that they want this candidate to have. And if it's a manager or supervisor role, the number of direct reports that this manager or supervisor will have. And everybody is going to want to know generally who do they report to. And the last thing, which is very important, is communication cadence. By that, I mean, during this process where you're talking with the hiring manager, finding out exactly, you know, how they wish to communicate, how often they wish to communicate. Oftentimes, we see this as part of an SLA, where you make an agreement with the manager that they will review all candidates within 24 hours or 48 hours. Then they will get back with you after the interview within 24 hours or 48 hours. So this is a conversation, communication cadence, again, about, you know, how fast, how often you want to communicate. Will you be meeting or talking weekly or bi-weekly, something like that. So I'm looking at part 2 of this, continue this conversation with the hiring manager. They are very good resources. A lot of times with job boards, they may know some niche sites, some associations that you can tap into. So hiring managers can definitely be a resource. And so I would always consider engaging them in this part of the process. Part of this is networking referral strategy to also ask about the manager. And this last one here, selling points of the job. Basically, you are asking the manager, why would someone want this job? So this is great conversation, great point, forces the manager to actually reflect on this. Maybe they can tell you some things that are actually selling points for you. Maybe there are, you know, advancement opportunities, growth opportunities. Maybe there's a flexible work plan, a 980 plan, or, you know, something along those lines. Maybe they can work 2 days remote. 3 days remote, all those types of things. So these are great conversations to have with the manager, great topics, and I guess a real tell of the position is if they themselves cannot come up with a selling point of the job, most likely, then you're going to have trouble recruiting for that position. So the more that you can have this conversation and flesh this out, with a back and forth dialogue, the easier the recruiting can go through, and also the easier that this process will be for you and the hiring manager. Obviously, with sourcing, you're going through the requirements of the position. And then again, this is another great conversation to have, because the next point after must-haves, we're talking about nice-to-haves. A lot of times managers do confuse this. I've noticed that they have a list of 10 items, and then when they are actually forced to analyze, is this a must-have or a nice-have, that list might be 4. And then those can become kind of your action steps to take. Then further going to nice-to-haves, those are some things, some perks to go through, some bonus points that if you can find someone with that you can include that, and have a discussion with the manager on that. But it's really again, a great conversation to have with the manager about must-haves versus nice-to-haves. Another component of this, target companies. Your manager, I think, again, is a resource. They know some companies are their competitors that they like to target or to stay away from. So this is a nice tool to have, going through this with your manager. To me, I think this is probably the most important part of the process, is having, some type of plan in place, for recruiting for the position. Obviously, if it's a repeat position where you've done this, many times or several times with a hiring manager, this may or may not be as important. But I think it's good to, one, review this every 3 months, every 6 months, because things change. Last year, things changed a lot, right? One month we're working, and then March, April hit, and then the whole world had shifted. So and now we're going through this back to work phase for a lot of other companies. So things do change. So it's always good, I think, to reevaluate this. Part of our process, there's that word again, process. As as we are trying to get better and using continuous improvement, having a CI mindset to go through our process. And this recruiting plan is part of that. I would love to know if people are using recruiting plans, if it's a requirement where you work, and how that is going.
Garry, we do have a question that came in, if you are open for that right now.
Sure.
Okay, and this doesn't have to do necessarily with the recruiting plan. It kind of takes us back, but I think it is an important question, and it may even come up later in your deck. But we hear this a lot from recruiters right now, and so hey, we'd love your input here. How do you shut it all off and still be effective in your daily tasks? I'm a
Ah,
work from I'm a work from home employee now due to the pandemic, and as a recruiter, I am working more hours now than when I did in office. It was easy for me to shut it off at work, but being at home now, I am working longer hours to source for those 6 to 15 requisitions that are higher level. Any suggestions, and how do you still meet your deadlines?
sure. We can talk about that. I do talk about that a little bit later, but let's talk about it now.
Okay.
I think one is boundaries. I think is a great word and concept. Working remotely can be challenging in and of itself. Now I'm in Los Angeles, and I am so grateful I'm working remotely that I do not have that 2 hour a day commute. That I have those 2 hours back in my day. So me, it is a huge work-life bonus. So I think you do have to set boundaries. You do have to give yourself a schedule as best as possible. I think that, and stick to it. I think there's that inner discipline that you have to have, like, hey, I'm going to work 8 hours. I'm going to work 9 hours. I'm working 8 to 4, and then plan an activity maybe after your workday that's going to force you to get up from the computer. I think that's part of it. Scheduling things out. Schedule time with friends or something fun afterwards. I'm going to go to the beach. I'm going to go for a walk, go bike riding. I think having a schedule and sticking to that schedule can really, I think, help shut it off. right? Because especially after we exercise, that does have a physiological change on us, and now we're in a different mindset. I think in the 70s and 80s, I think the plan was just, hey, I'll go down to the bar and have, a couple martinis, happy hour. But, we're living in different days and times. So I wouldn't recommend that unnecessarily. But I think finding some type of productive activity, something enjoyable, scheduling that out as part of your daily, weekly plan, I think can help you shut it off.
Thank you so much for that. And I just wanted to say, we've also had to adjust to so many things other than just working from home. We've had to adjust to having our kids at home. This has been just an entire overhaul of our whole lives. So, just my own input. I hope you don't mind, Gary. Forgiveness. I've had to work that into my own schedule. Just
Yeah, yeah,
forgiveness,
yeah, me as well. I've got adult kids, but I never knew they swear so much. Like, goodness.
right?
Yeah,
Thank you so much.
yeah. Okay, trackers. I love trackers. Uh, Also known as, to me, get out of jail free card, are the answer to the question when your manager asks you, what the hell are you doing with yourself all day? Now, trackers can give us a great tool to use to answer those questions, and tell our managers, leave us alone. So I've got a couple different concepts here. I like simple things, and I know a lot of us, work with ATMs or CRMs and asking, why would I need to use a tracker? Because I have an ATS. But the issue is, when you're talking with a manager or a group of managers, it does not necessarily, the ATS systems, unfortunately, do not necessarily have all these jobs, different jobs in one certain place. A lot of the better systems do allow us to export our own requisitions that we're working on. We use filters and things like that. And if your ATS is like that, then great. I would definitely export a report and make your own tracker. This is going to be useful when you have your weekly or bi-weekly one-on-ones with your own manager, because again, they want to know what the hell you been up to. What are you doing with your time? Especially if you're working remotely, because they, unfortunately for us, are not looking over our shoulders any longer. So this is a way to, again, to systematically, with organization, go through your requisitions and see what's going on. We're looking in the first line, looking for a spy, hiring manager Mr. Doom, and we see the candidate is James Bond. He is in background. He'll probably be in background a long time. So again, this is a way just kind of to track the various stages that our candidates are in. Are they in offer? Are they been submitted? Are they in interview? When we're talking with our hiring managers and our directors, they do not necessarily want to look at a complete rec report or all that mumbo jumbo. They need kind of a dashboard look. So again, being able to present this information in kind of a dashboard style format is going to be valuable to them, and again, help you look organized, that we are able to now provide great information, bite-sized information in summary form, and help everyone, really feel an informed part of the process. So that's really why I would definitely favor using trackers. Excel, obviously, your Google Sheets, obviously, which I kind of prefer because the Google Sheet saves everything automatically, so we don't have to worry about losing and tracking data or information. You can make these trackers as robust or simple as you like. The point is, make sure that you can find the information that is probably of most valuable, which would be the requisition, the position, total openings, and the status, as well as the name of the candidate. These are also great to go back through again, especially when you put in the notes section, the comments of the hiring manager that they're telling you something. I want this position on hold. Is one of the down the bottom, the darker colors, maybe position is on hold, or maybe as well as for your silver medalist candidates who don't make it, they make it to the final interview, but they are not hired. So you can you can track those candidates, put them on a separate spreadsheet. but it helps you kind of organize things again, like in one place. Because if you have to later on find these silver medalists, that is going to take time. I've done it. It will take time. So if you can have them in one place, then maybe make another list of, hot candidates, silver medalists, that is another tool to use. I had a situation once where I had kept a list of candidates who were kind of outside of the location where the manager was, but I happened to find like 4 or 5 good ones for a certain city that was just a little bit too far. But lo and behold, a few weeks later, that position did open up in that city, and I was able to give the manager those candidates like right off the bat within a couple of days or two, verifying that they're still interested. Boom, here's the resumes, and you're off and running, looking like a rock star, like a hero, saving the town. So great. So that's a great value of using trackers. Another type of tracker, more for activities, is what they call a Kanban board, part of the agile HR type of mindset that goes on. What I like about Kanban boards is they're very simple. You can use 3 or 4 type of qualifications or categories to doing, done. The only down part of this to me of Kanban boards is, in this example, they're using Post-its, and sometimes those Post-its may fall off the whiteboard. So I think digital ones can work just as well. Here's an example here. I have a workflow for TA. First column, we're looking at task. On the left there, I've got to open up Recs, so that's on the to-do list. I'm going to do some sourcing. That's ongoing. And then maybe make offers, as we talked about, someone who's in offer discussions, that's done. Because invariably, you may forget, our manager may call you up and say, where are you at with my opening Recs? And you say, oh, that's on my list. Where are you with sourcing on the engineers? Something that you are doing, it's ongoing. And the offer is obviously something that's done. So this is a great way to break up your tasks, your activities, and kind of keep a flow going. You can do this on a daily basis, which works really good. You may have seen this on there's an HBO show, Silicon Valley, that's the name of it. They were using what they call a Scrum board. Similar type of principle here. But again, you can use it digitally. These are free. There are some free websites that do offer free Kanban boards. I think Asana is one as well that you can look at and try incorporating this into your workflow. If anyone's using something like this, I'd love to hear about that as well.
I'll chime in here if you don't mind. We actually use Monday,
Okay.
just
Yeah.
monday.com, and it allows us to create pretty intricate planning tool, just boards, but it has the Kanban tools that are really, really awesome. Just thought I'd share that.
Yeah, Monday. Yeah, right. I did see that Monday.com is one. Yeah, I think it's awesome to be able to kind of simplify and look at your tasks. I love whiteboards, being able to actually look and visualize things. Many of us, learn better visually, as opposed to just having something inside, or on a notebook. But after being able to see things drawn out in front of us, I think it's great.
Yes, yes. And having multiple ways to look at things, just depending on your
Yeah.
own style. Okay, I'll hush now. Thanks,
Right.
Garry.
Good point. Good point, Ashley. Issue and escalation logs. So in project management, they have what they largely call issue logs, but it's kind of the same thing. So here you can see the categories here. Look at the date for tracking purposes, description of the issue, what impact is this having on our process, and what steps can we take to solve this? What solutions? I did this on different types of projects. One was, I remember we were absorbing a organization into ours, and we had different type of hiring events going on. That was one type of issue log that I was keeping. Another thing that was going on simultaneously was rec information, where the information on a new recs was not being entered correctly. And of course, that is definitely going to slow down our day. It's definitely going to impact candidates who don't have correct information. recruiters were giving out inaccurate information. So an action step would would be to escalate, talking with our own manager, but also I think being friendly with our managers, making the mistakes, maybe asking them if they want some more training. Can we be of assistance to them in the process? Where are they confused at? So this is a great way to kind of discover flaws in the process, in the workflow, see what's causing log jams, and a way to pinpoint those and take solutions, which I take a positive step toward finding a solution. I think that's the main part of it. One, identification of the issue, and then importantly, finding a solution to it. And so the issues, I just wrote down some examples here that we can take if you're sourcing and people aren't responding to you on LinkedIn. What's going on here? Are your emails too long? Are you giving you're making your emails too long? Are you reaching out to the right type of people? This is part of the validation process. But this is a great, kind of another type of tool to use when maybe your manager's asking what's going on with this rec, why can't we fill it? I'm not getting candidate flow on LinkedIn. Looking at your email process. Again, is the email, is it proper length? Are you being transparent enough on the email? Time of, the day you're sending it, most days don't matter, but you probably want to avoid sending your email on a Saturday. So just those types of things that I think you can look at, and again, use this as part of the, continuous improvement model, that mindset. We're always back to that where you're just, always trying to refine things. Looking at, issue logs, again, it's progress, it's not perfection. And this takes to another point here with issue logs, which leads to a kind of a more detailed discussion. But when you study project management and those theories in Six Sigma, those type of things, there's something what they call the theory of constraints. And an issue log will help find out what is holding up the process. So theory of constraints basically goes to what is the defect, what is holding things up, and by pinpointing and focusing on that defect, on that issue, then you can improve the process overall. And just find those little, again, those little defects, those barriers to your process, and then fixing those will increase your workflow, increase the process, make us more efficient, lead the quicker hiring times, all these types of great benefits. So an issue log is something to consider. Sure, I think it's a great tool. Always, as part of our process, I love to, be thinking of questions that I can ask myself and maybe my manager or my hiring manager when they come to us with, projects and requests. That the first one I always want to know is, what is the timeline for this? Because that would tell us a lot. That would help us plan out our day and our week. You also want to know who's the point person, who's owning this process. If this is a issue that's dealing with offer approvals, who do we go to then? Or this is something going to background checks, like credentialing, something like this. Who can we go to for answers to any questions that we have? And who are the stakeholders? Stakeholders just really means who else is going to be involved here. I actually did make a mistake once when I was, first mistake I've made. No, just kidding. But I was planning an interview day inside of our offices, and I was going to have candidates come on Wednesday morning, I think. I planned it all out, got the hiring managers involved, people coming to our office and everything. But what I neglected to do was talk to our HR ops people, which, our receptionist and a couple other people, to let them know that we have this event coming up, because they were actually in charge of parking. They could hand out parking passes, and they didn't know how many people were coming that day. So knowing one, who the stakeholders are, and then identifying all the stakeholders are, who are in the loop, will definitely help out. So just another aspect to talk, to think about when you're planning out projects and involved in some type of initiative or something, is to keep in mind who the stakeholders are. Finally, the last one is resources. None of us can do our jobs without the proper resources. So again, when I'm faced, encountering a new project, a new recruitment type project, I want to know what resources do we have available. Do we have LinkedIn and Recruiter? Do we have, access to what jobs board do we have access to? that help out with this, request. And this is a great exercise, I think, conversation to have with our hiring managers so that they can, be aware of what's going on. I think the worst thing to do is not have that conversation about resources. Then you're stuck in that boat of, hey, why didn't anyone tell me what's going on? So yeah, always, asking and being aware of resources that you have available. So here's some resources that I've used to kind of study, process, workflows, different things. So all of what I've learned and talked about has kind of been a compilation of courses and videos that I myself, and blogs, of course, that I've read. So Udemy, which is a learning website, they've got courses that, at rock bottom price, at $10 or something like that. Allison has free courses on their website. They talk about emotional intelligence, project management, just some of those courses that you can look at. Coursera is a online education portal. They've got classes from all kind of universities. Another great resource, project management, organizational development. Some courses you can take for free. Some you can get what they call, grants for. Some you may have to pay a little, but it's worth the investment. This is our career, your career. So I think it's worth the investment if you do have to pay a little. And I think also another upside to that is you can study these concepts, and if you want to one day maybe get out of recruitment, can't imagine why you would want to do that. Just kidding. But it could be good for your career if you want to advance in HR or some other part of the organization. If you want to be an HR business partner or something. These courses will definitely help you do that. YouTube is my #1 go-to. So many great videos on there. Free videos will lead you to other videos. But again, a great resource to have. Many of these videos are short, they can be 20 minutes, 10 minutes, but for sure, YouTube is a go-to. Now, this last one, HR Goes Agile. That's the article that I read from Harvard Business Review. I included that in there. If any of you have an interest in learning about Agile HR, this is a great article to kind of get you started. Agile HR, when I talked about the Kanban board, continuous improvement, which is a Japanese term. In Japanese, there's a term called Kaizen, which just means, improvement again. But this article and this, that mindset of, Agile HR, I think is something, talk about on another webinar perhaps, but this is a great start article to kind of get you going in that direction. And this is one of my #1 resources, The Little Book of Stoicism. And I love this quote because it kind of reminds me I think about our days. When you first rise in the morning, tell yourself, I will encounter busybodies, ingrates, egomaniacs, liars, the jealous, and cranks. Now, that could be numerous recruiting managers we interact with. It could be, unfortunately, some of our own colleagues. It could be our own recruitment manager. But the point is, this quote by Marcus Aurelius definitely helps us get in the mindset that, hey, our days are going to be filled with people like this. So we're not surprised, and so we can kind of keep in control of our own mind and reactions. So this is really a great book. You can read it, in little, bits and pieces, and pick up some great, tips on kind of how to interact with people and, accept people for what they are and where they are, and not have it affect us. Not have this kind of negativity fall on us. That's really why I love this type of this book, is to really help me relate to other people and find out where they're coming from. Again, proper mindset. None of this, I think, is going to be possible. And if you're on this webinar, then you are in the right mindset. Being positive, be good with where you are and level up your emotional intelligence, your empathy, your ability to listen, your ability to regulate your own emotions, as well as accept how other people are. After the year we went through with the pandemic all together, I think we're all in this together. We need, to listen to each other, empathize with each other. So I think these are all good tools to go through. And this slide here, mind your nest. None of this is going to work if your own house is in order. I don't care how good of a sorcerer you are. I don't care how great you are with these processes and how great of a tracker you can make. How robust it is, how many sheets it has, and if it's got all these, bells and whistles on it. If we ourselves are not, eating good, you're not exercising, at least going out for a walk, going for a bike ride. If you can run a half marathon, power to you. But if you can bike ride or go for a walk each day, please do that. This is really to the person earlier who had the comment about boundaries. Sleep, another superpower. Trying to get those 7-8 hours of sleep. Turning off the TV, turning off the phone if you need to. Whatever you need to do to get a good night's sleep, then please start doing that if you're not already doing that. And thoughts. Putting, kind of garbage in, garbage out. If we have those negative thoughts, if we're in a negative environment or have negative people around us, then we're going to have those types of thoughts. So kind of minding that, minding what's going into our day and into our mind, I think is, largely important. Jim Rohn is one of my favorites, and this kind of goes back to process right there, that success is nothing more than a few simple disciplines practiced every day. So again, we're focusing on the process, not necessarily in result, but focusing on that process and just doing these simple disciplines every day during our workflow. Thank you so much for listening. I would definitely love to hear questions and comments. Best way to find me is on Twitter at Garry Diala with 2 R's. I'd love to hear some questions and comments.
Thank you so much, Garry. We don't have any questions sitting right now, but usually if we give it a couple of minutes, people will send them. So y'all type your questions up and we can wait for a few minutes. This was fantastic. Thank you so much.
Yeah, that was interesting actually. How you said that your company uses the Kanban board, and
Yes.
that just shows how universal can be applied. That's not necessarily for a car manufacturer. That does have applicability, in the HR world or in your world, in the TA world.
Yes, yes. For me at least, looking at it from events management or project management, I found, especially when you're working with other people, I know that most of this was, you know, uh, based on working in your own workflow and keeping yourself organized. But love the ability to be able to look at tasks from different perspectives. So if Kanban works really well for you, and that's something that you can utilize better than say a spreadsheet, um, or a list of tasks or a to-do list or something like that, it's really good to have those different tools, at least from my perspective. And for my team, I find that as well. Some of us work really well with Kanban, and then some of us just can't process that. We have to have a list. So I love that. Thank you. Thank you. It's all really awesome. Oh, I'm rambling because I don't feel well today, just so everybody knows. But we do have a question that just came in, a couple of them. First of all, do you mind sharing your LinkedIn profile? I will grab that if you're fine with that, Garry, and share it with the
Oh,
audience.
yeah, that's great. Sure.
Okay, thank you. And do you feel, this is from Carolyn, do you feel that Outlook is a good source to keep you organized, like the Kanban boards or Kanban?
Sure. Yeah, I think the point is to use something rather than just a to-do list. Outlook, because it's something we look at all the time. I assume they're talking about the Outlook calendar.
I
Um,
think so. Are you talking about the Outlook calendar, Carolyn? Yes.
yeah, sure. Because Outlook, I mean, the calendar, you can schedule meetings, send out, if you got a phone screen at, 3 o'clock, then you can invite them, via Outlook to that. So yeah, that is a great tool to use. Anything, because again, in our day, there things can fall through the cracks. And again, when you get more detailed in the Outlook calendar, setting up meetings, a lot of places have it. Well, back when we were on site, you could, pick out different conference rooms and locations to have the meeting. and send it all out in one simple, you know, uh, click. So love it.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And then this is from Tony. How do you support 20 plus hiring managers? Oops, sorry, one second here. I went down the line. 20 plus hiring managers at the same time without sounding defensive.
Oh, yeah, language is important. I always, maybe thank them for the email. Hey, thanks for reaching out. At least that will set a better tone for the email and even kind of trick your mind into not feeling so overwhelmed. Um, you could try maybe grouping them or maybe talking to certain managers or certain days. That's one way. If any of them are related, in certain groups, maybe you could kind of batch them together, uh, group them together. I'm looking for any kind of way in that instance where I can kind of do things at the same time, simultaneously. If I can group people together or organize them, by days. I'm going to talk to manufacturing people on Mondays, and I'll talk to the um, operations people on Thursday. Then maybe group them that way by their group.
Thank you so much. And we actually had a tip come in from a from one of our attendees from AJ. He says a good tip is to mitigate issues or roadblocks throughout the sourcing life cycle, but to also brainstorm risks at the start to try to get ahead of anything that could go wrong in advance.
That is absolutely true. Yeah, and that's a huge focus of project management is risk management. Even positive risk. There's actually a thing called positive risk as well, actually. So if you are saying, you guys are planning a new event and it's going really well, do you want to enhance your risk and maybe share that with another company or a sponsor and bring more people in, to that event to make it even bigger? So
Yes.
so there are risks, positive risk and negative risk. And yes, risks are definitely part of the process because what could go wrong, right? It's recruiting.
I love your sarcasm there. That's great. So, from Patrick, what tools do you use for reminders and follow ups if you don't have one in your ATS? I'm tired of using Google Calendar invites as my sole reminder.
Well, sure. You can use your phone. You can set alarms on your phone. If you have an iPhone, you can even ask Siri to remind you. That's one thing. I love pop-ups on my computer that say, call starting in 10 minutes. If it's a WebEx call or something like that, they do have reminders that come up. I think GoTo has the same thing. Reminders do come up. We have to calendar things. Our daily calendar, we're looking at that and setting up reminders again. So whatever system you have, you know, optimizing that. You can use Siri, you can use your phone, meeting starting in 10 minutes, weekly meeting coming up, all those are things, anything and everything that I think at your disposal, I think is great. So Bixby, Siri, all those things I think are great tools.
Thank you so much. And we have a question here about Google Suite. Bianca says she's new to using the Google Suite with her new company, and she wanted to ask what your favorite tool in the suite is to use to stay organized or useful when presenting data to your manager or hiring managers.
Yeah, I would probably go to Google Sheets because it's very similar to Excel. And to me, the best thing about the Google Suite, the G Suite, is that it saves everything. I catch myself sometimes I'm working in Excel and I think I've saved something and computer goes off or something or it updates and it wasn't saved. I'm like, damn. So that's why I love G Suite for that reason, that able to save things and using Google Sheets that way. Again, you can save and present information in a summary form, which your managers will like. They don't want the granular details usually. And that's the advantage, I think, of using Google Sheets.
Thank you so much. And then here we go. We're going to get spicy with this one. Piggybacking off of the last question about the hiring managers. How do you verbalize to your hiring managers that they are not the only manager you support, with the expectation that they want you to drop everything and help them?
Whew. Yeah, facing that all the time. This week, there is also a time management productivity, truism mantra that is the 2 minute rule, which holds that anything you can do in 2 minutes or less, do that right away. But as I said to I think it was a gentleman before about uh, batching things, I think that's number one. And number two, really, most importantly, is the language and mindset. So starting off the email or the phone conversation with, hey, thanks for calling, thanks for the email, in a friendly tone of voice, just saying thank you, I think kind of puts you into a better mindset. Um, I think is a great way to start. When you say thank you for the email, thanks for reaching out, I think that's important. And I would not react personally or take it personal when they are asking you for all these requests. Our managers largely, they are in the day to day, they are in the fight of what's going on. They are just trying to get things done. I can empathize with them. So empathy, which is part of our EQ, emotional intelligence, is huge. They may have their own manager, director on their back. They may be facing their own deadlines. They may have had some people call off sick, or somebody quit suddenly. So you can imagine what that would do to you if we were in that same position. So I think having empathy, friendly tone of voice, thanking them for reaching out to you. And really, I think it's better if they reach out to us than to our own managers, or to somebody else, and to the COO or the C-suite, and complain about it. So look at it as an opportunity to serve them, as well.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Gary. We've reached time, so I'll try not to keep you strapped down for too much longer, but we really, really appreciate you being here. And this has been a wonderful presentation. Thank you to everyone who came today. You will receive a copy of everything that we went over and the video within about 3 days, usually sooner, but we like to give ourselves a little bit of that forgiveness that we all need this year. Also, please check out conferences.recruitingdaily.com. We have a huge D&I event coming up with Torrin Ellis, Aubrey Branch, quite
Woo.
a few. Yes, it's going to be a great event. It's kind of evolved. It started as, bringing in sourcers and recruiters who were working ground level in the D&I space, and then we just had people volunteering to come on. So we're really, really excited about this event. We want everyone to be there. Go check it out. Thank you, Gary, so much for being here. Do,
Thank you. I love it.
do you have anything else coming up soon that you'd like to share?
Well, I'm working on a book which talks about all the processes that we talked about today. I hope that will come out this summertime. You'll be able to see the announcements on Twitter and LinkedIn as well.
Oh my gosh, share that with us whenever it's published, and we will share that with everyone.
Awesome. Awesome.
Uh,
I really
Thank you.
enjoyed it.
Thank you, Gary. We enjoyed you too. And this is going to hang up on us as soon as I end it, so I'll email you. But
Okay.
bye, everyone. Have a wonderful week. See you soon. Bye, Gary.
Bye.